And you found out a couple years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great story. Let's talk more about that.
Okay.
And the similarities and differences maybe that you've even observed on this big hike.
You guys both burn the same. Both have big butts.
It's just fine booty, okay?
I do have. I'm glad you noticed that.
Maybe
dude,
we'll have
'cause
Bill crash with his nice birthday shirt.
Say, don't want to crash it with us?
Crash.
No.
Bill can like roll in at some point. How do you feel about this?
Is that me?
It's recording.
Oh, it is? All right, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so this is going to be a great interview, an incredible interview. This is the Doctor Podcast, and I'm not working, which is why this is going to be such a great interview. With a good buddy of mine, I went to hike Kilimanjaro in Africa, right? We're in Africa still. And I met these two fine gentlemen who turned out to be brothers hiking Kilimanjaro, but they've only known they've been brothers for 2 years. And I think that's an incredible story. Ahbe and Casey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
So what I want to know, what I want us to get into is, why did you guys hike Kilimanjaro and how was it? Why did you decide to do that? You haven't known that you've been brothers your whole lives. That's a good story. I kind of want to hear that. And then a little, how are you alike? How are you not alike? Where has life taken you? So, what is that story? 23andMe.
Sure.
Who signed up first?
I think I signed up in like maybe 2015.
Yeah, I don't remember when I signed up for 23andMe.
Yeah, it was
But
before they were pairing people. It was when they were just giving you kind of like a picture of the globe, and you got this much percent in this space and this much percent,
So give people who don't know, what is 23andMe, and in 2015, why did you sign up? I don't know a lot about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there was a sale on a pair, so it wasn't just me, it was actually me and my wife. And we did it for our anniversary one year, because she knew she had some really interesting heritage genetically, and I had no idea whatsoever. And so basically you pay, a fee, they send you a jar, you spit in the jar, you send it back to them, and then they give you kind of your genetic traits. And there's...
So you were initially curious to find out like heritage stuff, like
Yeah.
if parts of you were from Africa or Asia or
Right.
Europe or Native American or whatever. That's kind of what you and your wife did.
Exactly.
And initially, it didn't like connect you to potential other relatives.
Right. That wasn't part of the plan, so to speak.
What did you find when you did it with your wife?
In terms of my like genetic background,
Yeah.
it's pretty on par with what I thought. A lot of English, German, Irish, a couple of surprises in terms of like Ashkenazi. It's like
Uh-huh.
over 5% Ashkenazi.
Uh-huh.
And stuff like that. But a lot of people are either 1 or 2% African. Had some Neanderthal in there and that kind of thing.
Some parts of your genes show up more than others.
Right.
I've never done it. I'm kind of afraid, but I probably will do it.
I'm
at
sure
some
this doesn't
point.
make you any more brave.
I know. It can be scary.
Sure.
So you did that initially years ago. Do you remember when you signed up?
I think it had to be after you, Casey, honestly, because when I signed up, it was a similar thing, a 2-4 special, and my wife, Michelle, and I both did it. My main motivation was...
Both brothers
Yeah.
maybe like sales.
We love a deal.
Yeah, I love the deal. In my case, it wasn't as much the ethnicity background, although that was interesting. It was actually the medical side of 23andMe.
Okay.
And that's like a separate package you can do. But My
What is
wife,
again? What's the medical side for people who don't?
they match traits, like whether your risk of certain diseases that are known to be genetically related. It makes those connections and tells you like what are you more likely to have diabetes or less likely, things like that. It's not a guarantee, right? But one of the big ones for me was, in the case of my wife, she's high risk of breast cancer.
Okay.
Her mom died from breast cancer, so one of her two sisters are pretty likely to get it. So
Okay.
whether she had that genetic trait or not was high in my list, and the rest of it was more interesting. But at the time when I signed up, the ancestry part of like, did you have genetic relatives was a thing.
It was a thing
It
for
was a
you, and it
thing.
wasn't for you.
Yeah.
But that's not why you did it. You
No.
did it for the genetic medical
The
screening.
medical side, and then the ancestry part was interesting.
What did you learn about your ancestry?
I always thought I was a lot more Scottish than it turns out I am. Like, I'm actually more English than Scottish.
Are you
But
a little upset that you're more English than Scottish?
No, I think the funny thing was my wife turned out to be more Scottish than me, and we thought it was the other way around. So she's really big into Scotland. So
It's like if you rewatch William Wallace, you're like, oh, Braveheart.
Yeah, no, it was interesting, but nothing. I guess the biggest takeaway at the time for us was the fact that my wife did not have the genetic trait, at least the ones tested by 23andMe, and once it's just a small subset.
Oh, good.
For the genetic markers for breast cancer.
Okay, good.
So that was encouraging. As far as my own genes, it was more interesting. Things like I have the genetic trait to sneeze when you look at the sun.
Oh, really?
That's a genetic thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I have that. So my
And
wife
do you
always
sneeze when you look at the sun?
I do. And my wife always teased me when I would say I'm allergic to the sun. I'm like, no, it turns out it's genetic. But
Even better.
But it's fun things. Nothing groundbreaking.
Are you allergic when you look at the sun?
No. That's one of the things that we do not share.
Okay, so 23andMe does medical screening stuff. It does ancestry by ethnicity and location and so forth. And then at some point they started offering this feature to see if you have other relatives out there, right? And to connect
you
with
that have
them.
specifically used that same service. So
Genetically
only those
matched.
who have used 23andMe
Right.
can be matched to others.
Is that what
And
it's called? Is that what it's called? Matching?
I guess.
Genetic relatives or something
Yeah,
like that.
there's an app now, and it's a section on the app.
So
kind of
so
thing.
do you have to you say yes to this, right?
Right, yeah,
You
yeah.
have to
You have to
consent to
consent.
entering
Yep.
your genes out there for people to potentially find you.
Right.
When did you guys do that? And did you have any thought that maybe there'd be somebody out there?
I did it at the very beginning because it was a feature when I started.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, sure, match
So you
me.
kind of did it all.
I did it all at the beginning.
Okay. And what did you think then? Did you ever imagine maybe?
I don't think I put a lot of thought into it, but it was just knowing background. It wasn't a surprise for me.
Knowing background.
My brother, sister all have different dads. Like, the hippie generation.
Okay.
My first name's Ahbe. I mean, do you need to know any more?
Okay, so knowing your family history,
Yeah.
you weren't terribly surprised of the possibility
That
that
the
you had other
possibility
siblings.
exists.
Yeah.
Matching Casey was a surprise, just that, I mean, we're talking about a super edge case here, right? A single service, a single time, like, just the number of things that line up is very edge, so that's
Yeah.
a surprise, yeah.
Yeah. Now, so you did it before him. Did you later go on and turn on the?
Yeah, at some point I did, and just kind of passively negotiated my way through it, and I don't know that it was super user friendly the first couple of times I used it, so I
Yeah.
didn't really, and there was some second cousins and things like that. And
Yeah.
it's just meh,
Yeah, right.
So the past 5 years have been a very, specifically the past 5 years, been a very demanding time in my life, so it wasn't
Yeah.
really something that I paid too close attention to.
Yeah.
What I didn't notice, though, was that he had sent me a message probably, I don't know, maybe even a couple of years
It
before.
was.
So don't.
Before I
So hang
even
on. Before we
realized.
get to that message, did you have any expectations regarding potentially matching with
No.
anyone?
No, not really.
You didn't have this. You didn't have like some kind of sense that
No.
maybe somebody was out there.
No, I mean I thought it'd be
expectations.
cool,
Yeah.
but I didn't have any kind of keen like idea that there might be somebody out there that I was like you know, he shared about half siblings. I was an only child until I was 15, and then my mother remarried and had my brother when she was 42 years old.
Okay. Big
So
gap there between.
huge gap,
Yeah.
huge gap. So, yeah.
Okay, so what did you when you sent him a message? What did you see? Because it sounds like he was kind of busy with other things, wasn't
Yeah.
paying very much attention to it, and missed it for a while.
So when we first got 23andMe, obviously it was real exciting. You go through all the different charts and survey, all the things they have to tell you about
The
your
whole,
genes.
yeah.
And then you're kind of like, okay, that's neat, move on, right? And I hadn't logged in years since the first time that we got our genetics tested. 23andMe will constantly make new discoveries, and there'll be
Yeah.
new things available, but not something high on my list, more like a gee whiz interest
Yeah.
than a real, like, something you go check regularly.
So they kind of continually will check your genes against
It's-
new medical updates
Correct,
or whatever.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
that's kind of cool.
And so, anyway, at some point I had gotten probably an email from them about some new discovery or something, log in to see your, what your genetic, thing says on this new study. So I
Some new
log
marker,
in the
yeah.
site to check it out, and it says, oh, you got some genetic relatives, like, cool, and one's like a half-brother.
So it tells you right away.
Well, you got to click through it, but yeah, it'll tell you.
So it's not like he has to consent. He's already consented,
we already
and so it
consented.
shows you, wow, you have a half brother.
Yeah. So now, of course, then at that point, you have to, click the contact, and do you want to share your genetic results with this individual? You have to consent to the whole thing, but I was like, okay, yeah, like a half brother, like, you're kind of like, maybe,
So how did that hit you?
not really. I mean, like, it's interesting, but you don't necessarily 100% think like, oh yeah, this is guaranteed. I've got a brother out there. I
Were
didn't
you a
know.
little skeptical?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the genetics, the technology is not. They're not doing a 100% true DNA sequencing.
Yeah.
They're doing like genome mapping, like certain
Bits.
patterns. They're
Yeah.
just looking at certain patterns and certain bits. So it's not across your entire DNA. So when they say I got a half brother, I'm like, maybe. Like, I probably want to. What I wanted to do is talk to this person and figure out, okay, well, if that's true, where's the connection? Like, what family member?
Right.
Where would this be? So I sent a message through the system because you really don't have any contact information. It's just there is this individual.
They didn't like give you his
No,
home address and
nothing.
phone number and be like, go get him.
It's just another 23andMe user called Casey Hyatt that you matched half brother, and you really know nothing at that point.
So the only way you can contact him is through
Through
23andMe.
the system,
Yeah.
and it's required now for Casey to get back on. And I think it took us a couple years,
Yeah.
like maybe 4 years.
Yeah.
Oh,
'Cause it was
wow.
October 2020 before I responded to it.
So this has been almost 2 years. We're recording this at the end of
Sure.
right at the end of September 2022.
Yeah.
So you've known about each other for 2 years, 2020. So you maybe sent that message in 2016?
Yeah,
Wow.
easy.
Did you, I mean, I would imagine if I did that, I'd be like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
Like, I guess you can't do much. You just send the message and...
I might have gone back and checked like a couple weeks later, but it's just a sent message in the system with no reply.
You weren't too
Yeah.
excited or anxious about it.
It still wasn't necessarily like I had a brother. It's more like some interesting possible genetic
See,
hit.
I think if it were me and I would go through all of this thing and then it's like, hey, you got a half brother out there, I'd be like, yo, I'm ready to meet him, or not, or make that decision. So
Maybe you being a doctor, you trust the genetic research a little more than I'm assuming. Like, what's the chance that this is legit?
I think I would still be kind of skeptical of it because it's a matchy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not as legitimate as forensic,
Yeah.
genetic science, but it's a long time to wait.
I would have probably, if it was the other way around, I'd have probably been a lot more adamant about it.
If you were the one who
Yeah.
first, it was like, hey,
For sure. And the other part of that too is like I had matched with relatives that I knew were relatives as well. You know what I mean? First and second cousin.
That you already knew that were in your life.
So I figured it was a pretty sound instrument. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? In that way.
Yeah.
And even when I did notice, I didn't notice the half brother. I guess maybe because it was older in the queue. I noticed his son, who was a half nephew.
Oh, that's who you.
Right.
So okay.
Who
So
had
let's.
also done a 23andMe.
So let's go to you. So he's sent the message and is waiting for a number of years.
Sure.
Way to make him wait,
Mhm.
rather.
Yep.
And then you just like randomly log on one day after a number of years,
Yep.
and you look at it, and what did you first see?
So you kind of scroll over, and I think I might have noticed the message finally, and then realized just I don't know why it was so. I'm usually pretty like intuitive about that kind of stuff and like pick up
Yeah.
on little things like that. But maybe it was kind of the height of the pandemic in Nashville, and I was working from home a lot, and I think I might have had a lot more downtime, and I just finally like dug deep enough
Oh,
to see
interesting.
it. Yeah.
Maybe you got bored one day.
Yeah.
The middle of the pandemic.
Well, I remember
and-
specifically when it happened, and like I was in bed with my
What,
wife.
what do you remember? Yeah.
I was in bed with my wife, and I like leaned over and I was like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And she got super excited because she loves drama.
So,
You know what I mean? She does.
don't you, sweetheart?
Yeah.
Sure, you won't be watching this.
No, she ate it up. Everybody that I told ate it up.
So wait a minute. So what did you see? You mean because you said you saw a half nephew, or you mean
So
him,
I saw his son as a half nephew, and then below that it listed and it said half brother, and then I just kind of did a double take like a Ahbe, kind of deal. And because like I said, I had good enough reason I felt like to trust the technology, and I just kind of.
And what was your reaction? Like, were you excited? Were you kind of afraid? Were you like, I don't know if I want to meet this guy. What's he like?
All of it.
Yeah.
Because what does this mean now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
'Cause
After,
there is
because
a
you're,
little bit
because
of-
you're, what's your ballpark ages?
He's 8 years older than me.
What? How old are you guys?
I'm
Ish.
43.
35.
Yeah. Me too. Okay. So, I guess something else I'm wondering is, you said you went to 15 and didn't have any siblings.
Right.
So was there part of you that, I might have an older brother?
It's a cool feeling.
Yeah, were you kind of
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah. And I'll say this too. I was definitely probably one of those kids who could have used a bigger brother too. You know what I mean?
we're long lost brother, like the brother you never had
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you always needed. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you immediately message him back, or did you think about it? What did you do? You showed your wife.
I showed her, asked her what she thought. I feel like I've tried to do as much like background, like because I had his whole name.
You
So-
Google him,
And he's got a pretty unique name.
Yeah,
so like I
it's
did
easy to
everything I
find me.
could.
you
And, like,
Googled him. Is he in jail?
weird stuff
you
about
know?
Little Rock came up. I really wanted to figure out whose kid he was, like my mom or my dad, because it doesn't say like this is the paternal side or maternal side.
And were your parents still alive?
Yeah, both my parents are still alive.
Okay, you didn't want to talk to them first.
No. And so yeah.
So you try to figure out where did he come from?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what's his deal, and like if I figured if I could connect him because my parents grew up on different sides of the country.
Yeah.
Figure if I could like connect him because he was so much older than me to one area or another, then it would be
Yeah.
that much easier.
You're trying to figure out
Yeah,
whose kid is he.
yeah,
Yeah.
And then I think when I did message him back, it was still there was a delay there.
So hang on. So what was the delay between when you realized you had a half brother and you actually messaged him? Like a week, a couple months?
No, probably not that long. Maybe a few days.
Okay, a couple days. And so you decided, yes, I want to message him.
Yeah.
Do you remember the message?
It's probably still in the queue. I probably still pull it up.
Yeah.
What do you remember about how he reached out?
I don't remember his reply, but I do know I didn't see it again immediately.
Yeah.
So there was another
Because I'm
way.
not logging in the system all the time, right?
Right, yeah, right.
Because
Got push notifications
several
turned off.
several months go by. I don't even know if I had
Yeah.
the app installed, right?
Right.
Several months go by and he hadn't replied. You kind of forget about it, and it wasn't until you mentioned nephew, right?
Yeah.
So like 2 of my boys, I think, have gotten it done. And it's fun to see, how what genes they got from mom or dad, and how they relate to grandpa, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's when the nephew part popped up for Casey. But I think it wasn't until one of them was getting genetic tests done again that I happened to log in and see.
One of your kids.
Yeah, and see again, like, oh, hey, that potential half brother.
Do you remember how long that went before he saw you and replied? Months?
It was months.
Was it?
I want to say it was months.
Okay.
It was a while.
So you get a message from him, and are you like, okay, I'm gonna give him my number. Let's talk, or let's message, or how did it go in the beginning?
I think we pretty quickly moved it over to.
Yeah, we're like, let's text.
Yeah, we pretty quickly moved.
Let's text.
Like this would be a lot easier.
Yeah, because the 23andMe messaging system, obviously, as we've proven over several years of delays getting back and forth, it wasn't the best for.
I mean, you're meeting a pretty easygoing dude. I think of myself as a pretty easygoing, open person, but you don't know.
Yeah.
What this person's demeanor is gonna be like, how receptive they might be to
It's
a
a
conversation.
lot of unknown.
So like, there's definitely an initial like shock.
So you're pulling up 23andMe.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the app now.
And you're looking at.
It should still have our original conversation.
I'm curious if you can find the original conversation. That'd be really interesting to read.
I don't think it's nearly as exciting as you're expecting, but
Right.
It does. Whatever it is, I think is profound.
I remember one of the early things I remember is Casey very much wanting to know, okay, like, how
Where are
are
you
we
from?
connected?
Yeah.
Like, where are you from? What connection makes
is this
us
mom
a
or
half
dad?
brother? Yeah.
Right. That's what you're.
That was the big question, and I think that was our early conversations kind of revolved around: is this a potential match, or is this is it a glitch in the system?
Yeah.
So we're doing things like doing the math on our birthdays. Like, is this possible? Does it even line up? That kind of thing.
Like,
Yeah,
how old are you? Where do you live now?
Is this real? Is this?
Yeah, trying to
actually-
validate the genetic side.
Yeah, that
if this
makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you? So
He said he doubted it was his mom. I said I doubt it's mine.
Well,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
because
that kind of thing.
looking at your birthday, and I have a sister, and I'm like, it would be impossible for Casey to have
with your mom.
been with my mom like that, because she was pregnant with my sister. Like the timing doesn't line up.
You're drawing the family tree, and you're like Xing this part.
Yeah, so we kind of pretty early narrowed it down that it's definitely not my mom.
Do you know who your dad is? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Who's your daddy?
Yeah. So that came down to not my mom, and then it came down to, well, if it's not my mom, and
Do you mind telling me your mother's name?
yeah, trying to
kind of
track
thing?
that down, then is it? I mean, basically, canceling out a parent at a time. Like
Right.
So the very last message was him telling me his mom's name and where he was 33 years ago, basically.
Did you?
Which
So
is a
wait a
little
minute.
town
Wait a
in
minute.
Oregon.
And so we're trying to figure out who your parents are to the connection.
Right.
And it wasn't that you could just say, "Oh yeah, my dad, Johnny. Oh, my dad's Johnny."
Right.
And
Yeah,
it wasn't
that
like
wasn't
that.
the thing.
No.
That
Yeah.
wasn't possible.
Yeah. So we
And-
finally he told me where he grew up, like from when he was born, which is a small town in Southeast Oregon called
So wait
Ashland.
a minute. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. go
No,
ahead.
no, you're fine. That's
Go ahead.
so
You're gonna answer my question.
As soon as he said I grew up in a small town in Southeast Oregon called Ashland, I knew exactly who his father was.
Who was his father?
My father.
Because why?
Because that's where he's from. That's where he grew up. That's where the majority of my paternal side lives.
And did you know your father?
Not really. So my side's complicated. It's interesting now that you say this, Casey, because now it's sort of like you still know who your parents are.
Yeah.
Mine changed in this whole process.
Oh,
So, yeah, I mean,
I'm trying to keep track of this.
I'll give you the background on my side because it's
Okay, yeah.
complicated, right? So
Yeah.
originally, what I thought was my biological dad, what I thought was their relationship with my mom, it was like 2 weeks of sex and I was the result, right? And he was this guy that we knew that took off to Hawaii, and he was never part of my childhood, right? He wasn't my father. He was just...
Let's call him
His name's Rhett.
Red.
Rhett.
Rhett.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I always thought
Rhett was thought to be your biological father that wasn't really in your
was
life.
not part of my life. Who I
Okay.
consider my father was my sister's dad, and I have a half brother as well.
Did you know that your sister's dad wasn't your biological
Yes,
father?
always knew
Okay,
that.
so Rhett was considered your biological father, but functionally,
not part of my life. Really.
your
Just sort
sister's
of a
dad
friend
was
that we
your-
knew. Yeah.
yeah.
So
and you never had much relationship with Rhett.
No. So
Okay.
I say this to say that like there wasn't a stable like unifying father figure in my life because my brother, my sister, and I all had different biological dads. And even then, who I thought was my biological dad, I was technically 4 months old when my mom like redid the math and thought it's not this guy, it's this guy, and cold called him.
Did your
one
mother
day.
know?
Obviously not.
Really?
Obviously not, because she didn't. I was literally 4 months old when she thought it wasn't this guy. It's this guy who was my
Father, yeah, your biological father.
And so I guess at age of what, I guess I was 40 at that point or something, roughly
41, yeah.
41. Learning like, oh, you have a different dad.
Wow.
Not a
Different
huge-
than the story.
Different than the story that I'd grown up with. Did not come as a crazy huge surprise just
Yeah.
because I already had such ambiguity on what father meant growing up. So,
Yeah.
So not a huge hit,
But
more of
still,
an interest.
Yeah, but not the story you were told either. Not what your
No, but I don't
understanding was.
think my mom knew the truth either.
Is your mom still alive?
She is.
And have you talked to her about this?
I did. I've tried to bring it up, and I think your dad had much the same response. Sort of like, yeah, it was a crazy time. Lots of stuff happened back then. I mean, this is '79.
We're going to get into this in a second. This is...
and
You're challenging me. There's a lot we have to talk about. We haven't even gotten to Kilimanjaro yet.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess, not a surprise. However, my mom was also, it was a quick response of, I really don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So
How did you feel about that?
I still want to talk about it.
Yeah, I would.
And there's no...
Kind of a big deal. you
Yes
know?
and no. It's a big deal from my perspective out of interest, but not a big deal as in there's no animosity, no hurt feelings. I am who I am by the result of what happened, and I like who I am, and
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with
Good for
my
you.
life. But it's neat. Let's discuss this. This is, but
It's neat.
yeah, it's neat.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm jumping around here, but I can't hold my curiosity. Did you ever meet your biological father?
I have not.
What's his name?
Kim Hyatt.
Kim.
Kim.
Yeah,
Do you have a relationship with your father?
I do.
Have
Generally.
Does he know that you guys are brothers? Does he know of this?
So, I introduced this news to him very shortly after. I was actually
Couple years ago.
I actually started the conversation so most of my conversations with my father happened through the internet because he works offshore. He's a boat captain.
Okay.
And so I was introducing this information to him slowly as I was learning more about Ahbe.
Yeah.
And finally, when I got to the point where I was like, hey, listen, like, this is your offspring, like, most likely.
Is that what you said? Did you use that word?
No, I think, I will tell you what he said
It's a
because
little
my wife
funny.
thought it was
It's
hilarious.
a little funny, right? Hey, Dad, we need to talk. Like the son's sitting, Dad, we need to have a talk about sex.
Yeah, we need to talk about the birds and the bees. But no, and so my wife was helping mediate all this because I was kind of emotionally like just entangled already by the whole thing because my relationship with my father, Ahbe's biological father, has not been the greatest. Like
Tell me about your relationship with your dad.
Him and my mom split when I was 2 years old, and he's always worked offshore. And I'd say on average,
Where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up? I grew up in Southeast Alabama.
I know where you grew up.
Yeah.
I just wanted them to know where you grew
So
up.
I grew up in Southeast Alabama pretty much my whole life.
Yeah. You're a Crimson Tide fan.
Yeah, I'm an Alabama fan.
That's the
absolutely
I
true.
don't want the audience to think I don't like you. I just don't like that football team. So you
Fine.
grew up in Alabama, and your mom and dad split it too, and he was kind of
He
offshore.
moved
and
away.
Not, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, almost immediately. And so he was kind of like, see you a couple couple times a year tops.
Is that what you would see him a couple times a year throughout your childhood, whatever?
He'd get me for a couple weeks in the summer, and we go do something fun, and that. So he was just kind of child support / he was there.
How
but
was
I
that?
love my dad. He's really
Okay,
great.
I was going to say,
person.
how did you feel about your father?
I love my dad, and I've always wanted more of him, and
Yeah.
I think that's why I feel the way I feel.
Yeah.
I've just always wanted more of him.
So you start breaking the news to him, and
Yeah.
what does he have to say?
I was careful with my seed, and pretty much rejected the notion right away.
Oh, denial.
Yeah, he went straight there. And the more information about my conversations with Ahbe that I introduced to him, the more it seemed to kind of build up blocks against it. I'll put it this way. So I had several conversations with members of my family that don't necessarily have a dog in the hunt, so to speak. It just doesn't affect at all.
Yeah.
Because I really needed some insight. Like, I'm not going to try to make him do something or experience something he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it could feel like to find out you have a 42-year-old son that you absolutely knew nothing about.
Yeah.
Right. And so the conversation kind of just stopped on his terms, because it was like, well,
He didn't want to talk about
I don't trust the 20, because all I said was like, well, the easiest thing for you to do is just do a 23andMe
Yeah.
and see what happens.
Right. Confirm.
And he refused that because he said he didn't trust it. And then I said, well, what about like just doing like a private one? You know what I mean? Because I wanted some like rock solid evidence to say.
You
okay,
wanted to know.
Yeah, I wanted to say, listen, like this is it. And like Audrey's been real honest about all of it. Like he doesn't necessarily want anything. He just would like to get to know him, which
Yep.
I can't blame you for a moment.
You want to get to know your biological father?
Yeah, I think looking at Kim's response and my mom's response, both they feel like maybe some guilt involved with this, And the reality is that's not part of this at all.
Right.
Like I just want to get to know the guy.
Not for you. You're not angry
No,
or
not at all.
resentful. Or
I
anything.
exist. I'm
Yeah.
thankful for that. But
Yeah.
I think, like even who I thought was my biological dad, Rhett, like he's still just a good guy I know.
Yeah.
There's no animosity there. It turns out he wasn't. There's no animosity.
You don't feel angry that your biological father was involved in your life, or that
None.
was a yeah.
No, there's no animosity. There's no upset. There's no anger here. It is wholly and completely more of a like, this is interesting. I want to get to know this side of a family that I didn't know I had.
Yeah, part of you.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like there hasn't been a lot of progress with both of your father in terms of accepting this and then meeting you, at least where we're at now. Is that right?
Yeah. So one of the elders in my family that I respect incredibly, I reached out to. She's a minister, and she's had just a ton of experience in this, working with families in this way. And the way I laid it out to her, her response was, "Well, what do you want?" And part of what I want is for my dad to get his head out of his ass. But the other part was like, I would like to get to know my brother better, right? And she said, "Well, there's nothing stopping you, right?" And so I just kind of took that for what it was, and we just started talking. You know what I mean?
So tell me about your relationship that kind of started 2 years ago, and you're texting and then talking, and how did it go since then? How did we end up climbing Kilimanjaro together? Newfound
a
brothers.
little more simply than it would seem.
A lot more actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
guess-
it's a pretty
so-
unique thing,
It is.
I think.
So we did have the fortunate opportunity to meet in person once before climbing Kilimanjaro
Oh,
together.
really? You guys had
Once.
only met one time before?
Only one time.
Like for
Oh,
like
wow.
a weekend, literally a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Casey and his wife had been planning a trip for I don't know a long time before.
Where are you
that.
now?
Nashville.
Nashville. And you live...
Just outside of Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
So-
Well, it takes some effort to get together.
Yeah, we're not clear across the country, but pretty close. But anyway, Casey and his wife were planning a trip that was going to take them through northern Idaho. And
Cool.
so it was
You made an effort,
an
yeah.
opportunity to get together. We actually met up Snake River Canyon and did the jet boat tour ride together.
Just
I
some
tried to
outdoorsy
mix
stuff
in
together.
some like family-friendly stuff because
Yeah.
he actually volunteered to bring his wife and 3 children,
Yep.
Oh,
so
cool.
My boys got to
which
meet.
was a big deal for me.
You're married with 3 kids. You're married, no kids.
No kids.
So you guys get together. When was this? How long ago was this one? Over
Summer
a year
before
ago.
last or last summer? Last summer.
Last summer.
So like a year ago. So
ago.
what was it like to meet in person?
Fucking
What was
weird.
that? What was that first moment?
So I will say there was some apprehension because you don't really. I mean, you can kind of get to know someone over like a phone call and a lot of Facebook Messenger and stuff, but you really don't know them, right?
Yeah.
And so I was excited to learn that I had a brother I didn't know I had, but then there's a little bit of apprehension. Like, what happens if he's like a complete jackass? Like, what if he's a weirdo, right? Like, you really don't know. And
Yeah,
so-
or like my worry is like, what if he's a psychopath? Like, what if he's gonna come after me for money and start stalking and like
I don't think I went
not
there.
the case, but
No, I was just like, I hope this isn't just a complete waste of time. Like,
Yeah.
Sure.
But at least from my perspective, it turned out like both Casey and his wife, like they're great people. Like it was amazing how instantaneously when we first met up, I think we got together we had like an Airbnb or something. We got together for dinner and ordered some pizzas, right? And it was sort of like a little
Get to
awkward
know
get to
ya.
know
It
ya.
was break the ice.
Super awkward. Let's just
But you just-
absolute strangers.
you both felt awkward.
Oh,
It
dude,
was-
I did.
It was awkward, but it was like it was okay to be
It's
awkward.
like we have to do this.
Yeah, so like
At
let's
some point we have to do this.
Yeah.
stop the
Yeah.
chit chat and just dig in. And the reality was, it wasn't as awkward as you would think.
Yeah.
The reality was like it was really, really, really quick that both Casey and his wife Sarah, like they're just good people. And
You're-
you know it. You know when you meet someone and
Yeah.
you know they're a good person, like it doesn't take long for you to figure that out.
Yeah.
You're nodding your head to what he's saying.
Yeah, so it all kind of started. It was like I've got to at least have a conversation with this guy, and I remember very specifically the night we had like our first like phone call, because that for me that was like kind of a really big deal, and I don't know whose idea it was, but like we both pretty much just kind of told each other our life story,
Wow.
and I do that a lot, so it was easy for me. I don't know how easy it was for him, but it was really kind of incredible to hear some of the parallels and some of the not so parallels.
What parallels?
So I'm a recovering addict, so a good majority of my adolescence and early adulthood was kind of, I don't know how to put it. It was really structured by chaos and mayhem, right? And so I didn't have a clean start, so
Yeah.
to speak. And to hear him tell his story, he had every opportunity to do exactly what I did, but because whether it's nature or nurture or whatever, made a decision to do literally the exact opposite, in my opinion.
Not
You know what I'm
use
saying?
drugs and alcohol.
Right. I mean, I'm a high school dropout, drug addict, reformed, obviously, and I've been clean for a long time now.
Yeah.
But,
Good for you.
just didn't approach life in a way that invited structure at all. And here he is, like, joining the military as early as I'm not trying to tell your story, but like, joining the military early, marrying his high school sweetheart,
This was the
having-
contrast.
yeah, Christian household, all those things, and it was really amazing to hear that.
What do you think about the contrast in your paths here?
Just is. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think too much into it.
You said something. Go ahead.
Oh, I just like the version of Casey that I met. That was history, and
Right.
the one I know now
Yeah.
is not that addict. Not that like I like the guy I know now.
Yeah.
That's the only one I've ever known. So I
Yeah.
don't know. It's interesting, but
Yeah.
I don't read as much into it as Casey does.
And then the head nod is, Riggins was like, honestly, it's a lot like Kilimanjaro in that I just told him that we were doing something and we were going to be close to where he was going to be, and didn't even insinuate, just kind of like let that be a fact, and then he asked if it was all right to meet. But I would have never, I would have never asked for the opportunity to meet him and his wife and his 3 kids and spend time together and share space to a complete stranger, really. You know, because that was the awkward part for me was there is no other reason to be here other than this weird app says that we're, you know. And so it was just a strange time. But I really appreciated the opportunity to just share space like that, because then it made it a relationship from that point, instead of just like you know, you're this person and I'm this person, and we have this sharedness, but it's not quite.
So when you met in person, it sounds like that, I don't want to say changed, but it really further substantiated or developed your relationship.
Honestly, I think it started the relationship.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just information sharing.
Yep.
When we met, it became a relationship.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said when you met. You both admitted some awkwardness, but you also felt, now these are my words, not yours, like it was comfortable, or there was something there that felt familiar. I don't know how you would describe that, but
I think it went from awkward to comfortable really, really fast.
I agree with that.
Like within easy the first hour, if not the first half hour.
like, and this is, was it like, were there little mannerisms, or were you like, oh, we
My wife
kind of
picked up on
have
that
little, is it because you're, so the question is, do you think it's because you're brothers that maybe you felt comfortable so quickly?
Maybe. I just think of little things that come to mind. Like I know, like Casey was joking with my boys within like no time flat. You know, things like that normally when you're uncomfortable and reserved around someone new, you don't do. But I got the impression that you got comfortable really fast, and I was comfortable really fast. And talking about mannerisms and stuff, I do. Now that you say that again, I do remember Sarah pointing that out.
Yeah.
What are some of the mannerisms you both
I
have?
can't remember what she said.
I think Michelle did. My wife pointed out. They noticed more than we did because we were sort of like.
The
Yeah, 'cause
wives.
we're looking at each other and they're looking at both of us.
Yeah.
And we're kind of doing the same little like
They
movements
know
and things
your
like
stuff.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're picking up. I think there was a moment there where they were looking at each other, looking at us, and like pointing stuff out, and they kind of had their own little side conversations.
Yeah.
What
It happened.
were your wives' reactions to getting together and this whole thing?
My wife loves this more than anything.
Why? What is she?
I think there's an element of like novelty to it. She's an artist,
Yeah.
and I think there's a level of novelty to it that is just so outside of the box that she just eats up every bit of it.
Yeah.
And she loves.
She likes it.
Yeah.
What about your wife, Ahbe?
Well, I think my wife had a very traditional family, like the standard nuclear family without any of the drama that is my childhood.
Yeah.
And so I think she put a very much higher value on family than I do. In my mind, family is like is much more a choice as opposed to genetically this is who you're connected to just because of happenstance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it meant more for her that like if you have a brother, like this is important. Like I think she took it more important than I did initially. And so
Interesting.
but my wife is also, I won't say shy, but reserved. Doesn't make friends easy. She's not going to be the first person to start a conversation in a room. So meeting new people's hard. And the fact that she instantly liked Sarah, Casey's wife, so much and liked Casey like out the gate meant work, you know, an amazing amount for her just to be comfortable as well that quickly was a big deal. So yeah, I think she was excited for this to work too.
I'd be interested to hear your wives' perspectives and to kind of
Yeah.
just let the two of you sit here and like pretend like we're not watching, and then
Yeah.
have them go, look, they're both doing that thing.
Yeah.
That'd be funny. Okay, so you meet in person, and it sounded like that went really well
It
for
did.
both of you.
But it was only like 2 days.
Yeah, 2 or 3 days.
3 days tops.
We had planned activities, you know what I mean, to keep us. That was the other thing, like in the back of my head, I was like, if this goes to hell, at least like we'll be busy doing something. You know what I mean?
'Cause there's
so
a
we just
risk.
get to the other
Yeah.
side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
There
a
was
risk you
huge
both
risk.
took of just like, you could just fall flat. It's
Yeah.
Such a geek. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a geek.
What are we
I'm-
doing?
Brother,
Yeah.
half brother of mine's a geek. So where did you see it going from there? It's a year
good
ago.
question.
you get together, you meet. It sounds like it went pretty well, and then you're like, now what?
Yeah.
I think the plan eventually was for us to come down and visit you guys in Nashville, but the reality of life gets in the way. Constant schedules and work, and COVID didn't help.
Busy.
And it hadn't happened. It's just one of those.
So how in the world did you end up hiking Kilimanjaro together?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Like, Kilimanjaro hasn't necessarily been. I'm adventurous and I like to do new things and I like to challenge myself. But like specifically coming to Tanzania to climb the largest freestanding mountain in the world wasn't like on my list necessarily. But a friend Bill had put it out there that he was going to do it, and just kind of was asking friends like, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? And I let him know, like, well, and this has been almost a year ago. It's probably November.
So Bill puts it out, and you got interested in it.
Now, and I let him know, like, hey, I'm down.
At what point did he get involved?
A couple months later, I'd say.
At some point, we had a conversation.
We were just talking, and I was like, yeah, this is what this with Riggins.
Yeah.
I was like, just so happens I'm going to kill, and I didn't expect him to.
Did you were just talking about it, or did you invite him?
Yeah, I told him, like, listen, man, like, check this out. This is something I plan
Listen,
on doing.
brother.
Yeah. And and then he was obviously very interested.
Were you?
Yeah.
So when did you be like, oh, maybe I'll do this with him?
Well, climbing Kilimanjaro, I think, was always something like a bucket list.
It's totally bucket list.
It's just a bucket list. I've always had the same, outdoorsy, adventurous personality Casey has. Like, we're very much the same there. And it's always like, it's a mountain, it's there, so it should be climbed. You know, there's no logical reason why people do stupid things like that. But it's always been, something on my list. And so it's one of those, like, at some point you find yourself like, I think I was 42 years old at the time, and you still hadn't climbed Kilimanjaro. You're like, sure, let's do this. Like,
yeah. And I told him, I was like, there's spots. Like, we had already reserved this place.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's plenty of room, man. Like, I'm sure
so
Bill
you
would
had
care.
committed to this with Bill.
I'd
first.
already paid.
Yeah.
Bill's here. He's not been on the show at this point. He may. We'll see.
Not yet.
So you guys were in, and then you jumped in.
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of I think I almost invited myself, because when you were talking about it, it wasn't like, do you want to come to Kilimanjaro? It was more like, I'm going to go climb Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I always wanted to climb Kilimanjaro.
Can I tag along? I didn't realize you and Bill had started this thing first.
Yeah.
So my question is, like, you meet once. This seems like a bit much.
Yeah.
I mean, was it a
good
little
sized
bit
jump.
much? Yeah, it was kind of a jump, right? Like,
It's a huge jump.
So, I don't know if it's a combination of just life experience, or if it's just my personality, or just kind of the new freedom that I've been given in recovery. But typically, if there isn't like resistance from the universe, I'll just let that be the answer. And it just
go with
right.
the flow.
Yeah, and it just felt right, and it just made sense, and it was something that he could do.
You didn't have reservations about it. You felt good about it.
Not a single reservation.
What did you think?
I was like, let's go climb Kilimanjaro.
Let's do it,
And
baby.
I don't think I put enough thought into it, honestly. Oh, I say that because it wasn't.
I've climbed it, and now I have some reservations.
Well, there's that. That's an extended story. But no, at the time it was more like, yeah, let's do this. I had already committed to it, and then I sort of like told my wife, oh, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. Not really like, hey babe, is it okay if I climb Kilimanjaro with my brother Casey?
Sure.
And so I think her initial response was like, oh, you are you? Like, so my presentation on that one was a little off. But yeah, that's how quickly I decided to do this.
Yeah.
Like when I was like, hey, that sounds awesome, I want to climb, and I didn't get like, Casey was like, well, let me make sure it was more like, yeah, let's do this.
Let's go.
That's how quickly this decision was made.
And you both felt good about it. It
Absolutely.
sounds like.
Yeah.
It actually was made easier in my household because, like, neither my wife or I make a ton of money, so this was a big investment in an experience that we
Yeah.
were going to share.
Wow.
This is one of the first big trips that's just been me.
Yeah.
And so it was made a lot easier when I said, well, Ahbe's coming, because
She liked
yeah,
that.
she loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's
okay.
now it's a brother's trip,
Yeah.
and
That's
So it's a
interesting.
good-
Now
it's a
you've
good
got
way-
that.
good
But
caveat.
that's a big sacrifice.
Absolutely.
It isn't cheap. So tell me, how was climbing Kilimanjaro? And there'll be a few for the audience that listens to this regularly. We're going to talk a lot about climbing this mountain. We've already had some conversations about climbing the mountain. There will be more about climbing this mountain. What was your individual experience? How was it? What did you expect? How was it? And how was it to do together?
You want to start on that, Casey?
Sure. My expectations varied depending on how much I read, and I think I picked up real early on that I didn't want to know as much.
So did I.
So I actually avoided articles
I totally
on
did.
our particular route, and I didn't read reviews, and I had already made the commitment. So it was like, I'm just going to do my best to train,
Yeah.
which I can say I probably didn't necessarily live up to my own personal expectations because of some physical limitations that presented themselves right before the trip that you're aware of. And
Yes, I was intimately aware of it.
it was
as
nice
your
to have a doctor
personal Kilimanjaro physician for 9 days.
Yeah.
And
Take note of that, audience.
Yeah.
If you're going to climb a big mountain, take a doctor
Yeah,
with you.
had a little urgent care session every morning after porridge.
You did well. You did well in multiple regards. Thank God.
And so yeah, so it was more of just be as prepared as I possibly can, and it was definitely more than I expected.
What do you mean? Explain that to. I
Yeah.
didn't know anything about this thing until
Sure.
I was on the damn
Sure.
way
so-
up to the summit. So explain to people,
Yeah.
give them some.
Well,
idea of the experience for
Some
you.
people will tell you that, one person specifically that I can think of will tell you that, oh, it's just a day hike every day. You go to sleep, you wake up, day hike. It's super easy because and there is some effect of having so much support staff, between the porters and the cooks and the guides, and not only that, but having a group of people, we didn't know each other at all. And now we're sharing space together intentionally because we built so much, in my opinion, we built so much connection just in that short period of time. So there were 13 in all.
We had a good crew.
Very
Amazing
good crew.
Yeah, we had a good crew.
I can't say that the odds were in our favor. I'll put it that way. That we had so many really sharp, intelligent, caring, dependable people on our team.
You got a lot out of the crew.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Everyone's willing to share.
I can't say that if it would have just been, me and Ahbe and Bill, for example,
Yeah.
that we would have had. I know we wouldn't have had the quality of experience
Same
that
experience
we did,
for sure.
but maybe not even the same quantity of experience.
Yeah.
Because it is all about headspace, and I think when we got into that, there were 13 of us, and I think when we got into that 13 mode, we didn't just believe in each, ourselves independently, but we seemed to believe in the group as a whole, and we all did make it to the summit.
So we did an 8-day hike on the Lemosho Trail to the summit. 13 of us.
Yeah.
We all made it.
We all made it.
We all made it over the span
top
of,
and back.
over the span of 8 days. So I wouldn't have called any of those hikes, any of those days easy.
Not a single
Those are
one.
my words.
Yeah.
Here's your own words. If you want to call it easy, I'll throw you in the pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some were a couple, 3 hours. One day was 14 and a half hours of hiking. That was the day I logged 53
53.
54,000 steps. And we hiked for 25 miles. Believe that. Anyway, so your experience, you talked a lot about the crew. Was it harder than you expected? You kind of, I think I did a similar thing as you, which is I was like, okay, Jake, let's go. And then I knew in the back of my mind it was a bad idea. And I was like, I don't need to know. What kind of boots do I need?
Yeah.
I need this kind of jacket. Great, I'm ready. And I think purposefully was put on the blinders.
Interestingly enough, I think day 4, it had to have been day 4, was the most difficult day for me.
Was it? Why?
So I had, at the end of day 3, gotten sick. And I mean...
Altitude
sickness.
And what did that feel like for you?
Like the worst parts of the flu. Just like really icky. My body felt just diffused of all energy, no appetite, kind of a headache, kind of not, but like just overall just couldn't focus, right? Couldn't really put my thoughts. And then the anxiety based on the altitude sickness made it that much more worse because I felt like if the guides saw me in bad shape, they might limit my ability to complete the hike.
Yeah.
And so it was just like this like weird like twilight. I'm the only one that feels that way, and like I said, we got a good group. Everybody, is chatty and laughy, and I was not that at all.
We had a group of 13 men, and there was some typical every morning and night when we checked in. How are your symptoms? Fine. I'm fine.
Everybody.
You guys fine?
We would be
fine.
Absolutely just like.
I was not that one. I was like, I feel like shit again today. But we did have a lot of that.
Yeah, we would be complaining all the way up until they came in the tent to check on us.
God, this is horrible. Oh, yeah. What? My oxygen level was great. Hyperventilating to make your O2 go up. I'm good. I'm not stopping. I'm fine. No symptoms. Oh.
Yeah.
How was it for you? The hike?
The
whole thing?
It was, yeah. So coming into it, I felt way unprepared. Because this is one of those things, I think we signed up in January.
Yeah.
And I had all these great aspirations to get in like the best shape of my life over summer.
Yeah. Didn't we all?
Yeah. And the reality is work.
I'm going to run a lot.
Work was so busy. Personal life was trying and busy. Everything conspired against me. And like, it was like I blinked and it was September 1st.
Yeah.
And I just felt so unprepared.
But I want to say, from my perspective, I feel like you were one of the more acclimated, if you will. You live at a little bit of elevation, right? What,
about 3,000
3,000, and then you've done a handful of hikes. You actually have experienced some altitude stuff before. Of all of us, I think you may have been more on the
In the end, I think I probably was one of the most prepared of the whole group. But I didn't feel that way going in.
Yeah.
I hadn't done tons of research on exactly what I was up against. I just know that like this is a 19,000+ foot mountain. That's not. Having been on 14ers, that's no joke.
See, it didn't mean anything to me. I was like, I don't care. Bring it on.
But I had this difficulty in my head because when you looked at the routes and it was like, you're going to go 5 miles. And you're like, okay, 5 miles, that's an easy hike. Like even climbing elevation. But then they said it'll take you 8 hours. And I'm like, I'm looking at I'm like, 5 miles, 8 hours. It didn't line up. Like their entire thing didn't make any sense on paper before we went.
Yeah. Shouldn't take that long.
Yeah, like it shouldn't take that long. Like maybe they're talking worst case, lowest case denominator. I could easily hike it way quicker than that. I expected to get to camp super early every day and have like tons of free time and just be like.
I kind of thought that too.
I brought my Kindle to read. I was reading The Snows of Kilimanjaro. I read 6 pages.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
14%.
But you carried it to the summit, by the way, just about.
No. Porters carried it for me.
There you go.
It was carried.
It was carried, but it turns out like every one of those timelines were spot on because it might have only been like 5 miles, but it was a brutal 5 miles.
Yeah.
And so it ended up being. I don't know what I expected. It was hard. I don't know if I expected it to be harder or not. I had difficulty with the packing because you start off in like rainforest, but then end up in like, 0 degrees,
Cold.
top of a cold of a mountain.
Really
I think
cold.
the entire trip turned out a lot colder than I expected.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it turns out that even the rainforest was cold.
Yeah.
Would I do it differently next time? Probably.
Next time?
It's possible.
Oh.
If my youngest son, who's my adventurer, if he wants to do it, I'd be like, okay, let's do this. I'll do it
Yeah.
again. I'd be a lot more prepared. But I think a background of having climbed mountains, spending a lot of time backpacking, I probably was more prepared than most. That said, it's not an easy climb.
It's so hard.
And I think the hardest part probably is the mental component. And as Casey was saying, having our, Team 13 made a huge difference because we were
Did that also resonate for you?
sure, because I think especially like the peak day, that 14 plus
my
hour
God.
day, what I can compare that closest to is running a marathon. Like when you hit the 20-mile mark in a marathon and now you have the second half of a marathon to run, and it's everything in your body just says stop.
Yeah,
Everything
screams,
wants to stop. That's the same feeling as we're in the dark trying to climb that peak. It's the same kind of mental anguish that you have to overcome. But having a group of guys of 13, like, you can't be that one.
No way.
You cannot be that
Exactly.
one. You will continue. And then there's a
We had
certain
a great
component.
group.
Oh, we did. And
Such a great
there's
group.
a component of, I had the opportunity to hang out with Casey. We're sleeping in the same tent.
Yep.
I mean, I actually got to know Casey. You get to know someone after 8 days in a tent together on a brutal anguish, hike of we're all getting broke down. Like, we all came out of that looking like, like we're homeless. You get to know a person really well.
What did you learn about your brother?
That he's exactly what I thought he was. There was no surprises with Casey.
Which is what?
The person that I learned in the first hour of our first meeting is still the same guy after 8 days on Kilimanjaro.
What you see is...
What you see is what you get. He is straightforward and honest as a guy you'll ever run into. He farts a lot more than you would think.
A lot more.
But it turns out elevation has a key. We looked it up.
Apparently.
There is a thing.
There is a thing.
I think one of you guys
Man,
told me.
Never in my life that
Altitude flatulence
Yeah,
syndrome or
it's a
something
thing.
like that.
And Casey took full advantage of that. But no, I mean, yeah, it was a great experience.
How was it for you to do Kilimanjaro with your brother?
I was really grateful that we shared a tent. I think if there's anything about any of this that I might try not to acknowledge, it's like how much I want to get to know him better and like how much I want to just like learn more about the person that he is. And besides the obvious, sharing a tent, spending that, personal time around each other and sharing space and, very limited space, learning people's kind of ticks and cues and things, which was actually very easy to do with Ahbe because he's the same way. He's very honest dude, very forthright, very, very easygoing, is how people are in a group setting, especially a group of people they don't know. Mm-hmm. You learn a lot about a person by how they interact with others that they don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big part of my work is like watching people in that. And not that I projected that onto this experience, but like, you really pick up on a lot of someone's qualities based on how they treat others. Mm-hmm. And so it was really, really special in that way.
I just think it's really cool. Any of us that did that thing, I think it's really cool. But
Yeah.
It's really cool you guys did that together.
Yeah, the way it worked out is cool. It definitely building memories, I think, has more to do with being brothers than being brothers.
Yeah.
And I think being intentional about creating memories together is going to be the thing that drives our relationship.
How do you feel about your relationship and being brothers, having done this big thing together? And because you didn't, it's not like you just kind of did an easy, like this is a pretty major bucket list thing,
It was trial by fire for sure. Yeah, no, I think I come out of this in relation to Casey feeling like we've been brothers a lot longer.
Sure.
I bet.
I mean, it's not, technically, like we've been brothers and just didn't know it. But what I mean by that is like the relationship of being brothers
Yeah.
might have started last summer when we finally actually physically met, but it feels like we've been brothers for decades. Every now and then there'll be like a random thing come up, like, oh, like what is your favorite cake? You know, like
Yeah.
we just, a couple hours ago, like things that normal brothers that have been brothers for decades would probably have figured out that were still like just stupid questions I never thought to ask. And
Yeah.
lots of those came up during the
Yeah.
trip.
Sure.
But the fundamental quality of just hanging out with someone, yeah, it just feels like we've been brothers forever.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Just has been.
And there's weird synchronicities too. Like one thing that I've enjoyed immensely is just kind of like we sit out here by the pool, nightly, and since we've gotten back, we've got more oxygen in our blood, and it's easier to have like a genuine conversation. You're not in survival mode anymore, and so
No kidding.
just like the late night just talks about whatever, and him sharing about his marriage, because he's got a lot to teach me.
Yeah.
Vice
About
versa.
marriage and family and career and all those things. And so, but just like getting to know somebody on a deeper level that way, it doesn't happen like in a forced way. So like just having downtime to just be with each other and be interested in each other has been really incredible. And the family component of it is kind of strange to me. So like for whatever reason, I haven't always felt like I had a strong network of family, right? Like I've really been dependent on, Narcotics Anonymous and, close people in my network, family of choice, right? And so I haven't always felt like that bond with the people that I share blood with. My mom, obviously, my brother, my younger brother. But there was a moment, and I wanted to make sure I shared this, that really sticks out to me still. We were on that jet boat tour that Ahbe was talking about on the Snake River outside of Riggins, Idaho. And if you want to get a really good splash when you're going through the rapids, you go sit at the back of the boat, right? And his youngest, Isaac, the adventurous one he mentioned that he wanted to go to the back, and I told him I'd go back there with him because I'm also the adventurous one in the brothers. And so I go to the back with him, and there's a couple sitting back there, and the gentleman says, "Oh, you're going to come back here with your dad?" And before I could say anything, Isaac corrected him, and he said, "Oh, that's not my dad." He said, "That's my Uncle Casey." And I'd known him for 2 days, and that feeling was something that I didn't know would come, right? It was definitely something that I didn't know was going to be in the works.
What was that feeling in that moment when he called you Uncle Casey?
I don't know. I'm kind of a big softy sometimes. I'd shed a little tear, and I definitely had a moment of gratitude and
Emotional.
some deep reverence for what was actually happening and getting to know him and his family.
Pretty special.
Yeah. But definitely, like the same thing, I don't feel like I missed anything. I don't feel like I got to it too late. You know what I mean? I think I for whatever reason, missing that message for 4 years, like I'm sure there's a reason for it. That thing too, it's just like, I think everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to. And I think as long as you take chances, even if it's climbing Kilimanjaro with a stranger, then you might as well do it.
Turns out we got to climb Kilimanjaro with, 12 other strangers.
Yeah,
A group of 13 that all became brothers to one extent or another.
exactly. And that's how easy it is,
What's next
It's a good question.
for the brothers?
As far as crazy adventures, we need to do South America.
We talked about Patagonia.
Yeah,
There's been some talk.
been
Yeah.
some talk.
Maybe you could be our translator, is what Jake signed you up
Are you
for.
giving me two jobs now?
Yeah.
It's like physician and translator.
Yeah.
Great.
Definitely.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah.
I've been planting that seed for a week, baby.
Bill, Jake, you want to come in for just a minute? You should. Maybe we'll get the two of you on the show next.
I don't want to talk. I just say Killy 13. Let's get it.
1-3, baby.
Next
We're
stop.
gonna wrap this one up.
Next stop, South America.
Thanks for talking. It was great. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
I guess just talking about our, Philly 13 again, how everyone was so willing to share. That's something I find
Yeah.
so amazing, because we started off all as strangers. Let's be honest. I never met Bill, even though he's the instigator of
This is Bill.
Yep.
You guys started it.
Yeah.
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 I
and
did.
You jumped into there.
I never met Bill at all. Didn't even talk to him until like the airport in Qatar.
Bill,
on our last
welcome to
trip.
the show, Bill.
And
Good
so,
to see you, Dr. Larry.
but you have a complete group of honest strangers. I'd known this guy a single day, right? A weekend. You start off with 13 strangers, and how quickly we all just settled into it. Truly a team, work
Yeah.
together, and share. Whether it's like sharing sunscreen, or someone forgot, ibuprofen, or someone decided they want to take Diamox and didn't bring enough, and someone else had extra.
Yeah.
And at any point, if anyone had something they needed, I was amazed at how willing someone would be like, oh yeah, I hook you up. Like I got this. Wrapping your toe with, Adam with the special tape thing.
He wrapped
had.
my toes the last day.
Dude, MacGyver,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, I mean,
Everybody had enough for everybody else.
Yeah.
but
It was a great crew.
individually we wouldn't have made it because everybody seemed to forget something. But together as a team, we all pulled together, and that doesn't happen with just 13 strangers. That's what really amazed me. So yeah, we were talking about brotherhood here. We had 13 brothers.
Oh,
That's why we made
Amen
it.
to that.
great crew.
It's a good time.
It's a good time.
Started here. Maybe we'll hear your thoughts on Kilimanjaro at some point, Bill.
Yeah.
Big
I
4-0, baby.
It definitely, it was one of those things. It was a bucket list item. It was something that I always had thought about doing, and I was actually inspired by, believe it or not, Netflix. I watched The Alpinist, and then I watched another one where the gentleman climbed 7 peaks, and
Yeah.
one of those was Kilimanjaro, and it was like I felt like a lightning bolt go in my spine. I was just like,
Like you had to do it.
I've got to do it, yeah. And I went online and started searching it out, and booked the trip like pretty quickly. But I wanted people to come with me. I kind of wanted to have.
So you booked it first before you guys.
It was
You
Bill's-
just put it out there. I'm doing this.
Yep, yeah. I just was like, I'm going to do this.
Might have been the first member of the team.
I think I was the first. member.
He was.
Yeah.
It was.
He was the first member.
I
of
think
the
we
team.
were the last one.
Yeah, we were too.
We
took
booked
the
like a
last
month
two
or two
spots.
ago.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were watching it too, watching it fill up. Like I'd log in every now and then just
Oh,
to
really?
see how
You
many
could see-
people had signed up.
Oh,
yeah.
We
wow.
see how many spots were available.
Oh, no kidding.
And it's one of those things, like, I would have definitely done it by myself. But I thought it would be cool to go with someone that I knew, and so I put it out there. I actually invited as many people as I could, and everybody kind of did the whole, like, oh, that's so awesome. I would love to climb Kilimanjaro, but everybody, it's like, oh, well, how long is it? When is it? 2 weeks? Ooh,
Is there showers?
It's just kind of in there. It's like,
How's the
yeah,
bathrooms?
that sounds cool. Let me know. Blah blah blah. And finally, I decided to put it on Facebook and just kind of see if I got anybody. And luckily, Casey signed up or gave me a call about it, and it all worked out. And then Ahbe had a chance. And Casey was super respectful because he was like, "Do you mind if my brother comes?" And of course, I'm like.
I think I'd already signed myself up before that conversation happened. So yeah.
But he was
thanks for letting me
respectful.
tag
It was
along.
like I called Bill right after that phone call.
Yeah,
and I was
he's
like,
he's
hey.
respectful though, because it's like, well, I don't want to just be inviting everybody else to something that he instigated first or whatever. But yeah, the trip as a whole was incredible. The brotherhood was probably, I think, the best part about it, and I would say that, the 6 days getting up above the clouds was the best part, and I thought it was about, that was kind of what I expected, although I thought maybe it was going to be a little bit harder than that, and then the actual summit day was harder than I expected,
Yeah.
and which kind of made the whole thing a pretty big beast. You know.
Maybe I can get more of your thoughts on the show next time. Let me get this one question for you, and we'll wrap it all up. From your perspective,
He's probably not afraid, by the way.
that's okay. We got his voice.
That's fine.
We've got his shirt. We got his voice in his shirt.
There you go.
How was it seeing the brothers? How did that look to you? These guys going together.
If you didn't tell me that they didn't know that they weren't brothers, I mean, I would have thought that they'd been brothers their whole lives. You know, just kind of the way that they got along, the way that they interacted. I mean, hell, the way they look.
That is why we did this show, because they told me that they only 2 years ago did it on 23AndMe. I was like, what? I thought you were brothers
the same
forever.
body type, some of the same mannerisms. They had the same flip flops. I mean, it's kind of a special thing, you know. It's like nature versus nurture, and yet they're two very different individuals, and yet share a lot of the same similarities.
That's cool.
Very cool.
Thank you for telling your stories. It was incredible. I loved it.
No.
We were a great crew. Here we are. It continues. Maybe I'll get you two on the show tomorrow.
Sounds great.
Thanks
Sounds
for
great.
watching. We're done. Goodbye.
Soon.
Teasers are over. Hey, that was a great job.
Actually, that was a lot more enjoyable.
How was
than I
it? Did
thought.
you like it?
Yeah, no.